Calling to order. Redevelopment Commission, November meeting, Tuesday, November 26th. I need to determine if we have quorum, and we do. Everyone present. Commissioners, I'm assuming that you guys have all seen the minutes and have reviewed them. Does anyone have comments, concerns, changes that need to be made? Nope. All right, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, that was good. We had to try that again.
Has been practicing.
Well synchronized, yes.
All right, next on our agenda is the claims and purchase orders for payment. Before we approve these, Cam, will you kind of give us a breakdown of what we see here?
Yes, with the caveat that I just got these as well, but I think a couple of things that I would point out here beyond obviously some property tax bills on the Pendleton Pike property and the Dunn Street property. Dunn Street being the parcel that interrupts Record Street that we acquired a couple of years ago to eventually connect those two, and a bond for Commissioner Kimmery, which again is strangely out of sequence with the rest of you. But I would point out the admin fee to U.S. Bank is, I believe, related to the bonds for Monarch Beverage. That is, U.S. Bank is the trustee. In that case, there were TIF bonds issued when that deal was put together, and there is a trustee fee that's usually part of that. So I think that's the only other thing beyond my time. The only other item that we don't normally see on the monthly basis. So nothing further from me on those, Mr. President.
Questions? Cam? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we're going to go to the staff report. There are two items on here. Cam, can you give us a breakdown of what we see?
Certainly. I'll start with the Freegee project involving the same Pendleton Pike property we just authorized some tax payments on. The project agreement was executed, and the company's due diligence is ongoing. The latest update is we've got a series of hearings coming up in December related to land use matters. Freegee Engineered Solutions is petitioning for a rezoning vacation of Plummer Street and several variances from development standards to allow for really, I see it as maximization of what the site can support in terms of building size. If looking at it from our perspective with regard to a project that we supported and are incentivizing, I think I'm very much in favor of the rezoning and the variances that have been requested because it does allow for the footprint to be maximized and the impact to be maximized in relation thereto. So we've received all the public notices. I've been in contact with Freegee Engineered Solutions land use attorney, who's Russell Brown he's a Larence resident that we know well. The rezoning will proceed in front of the Larence Common Council on December 2nd. The vacation will proceed in front of the Metropolitan Development Commission downtown on the 11th. And then the variances will be in front of, I believe, the Larence BZA on December 17th. And so between the mayor's chief of staff and myself will be attending those meetings and monitoring how they go and likely lending a support to the petitions that Freegee has filed so that the project can happen Those set up then what we hope to be a real estate closing, a conveyance before the end of the year. So that's the current timeline. There are other things going on in the background. The traffic study is underway with USI consultants that you all previously authorized, looking at traffic patterns and movements in the area and making sure that we can strike upon a site plan that accommodates sort of users in the area, along with the addition of this company in the headquarters building there. So all of that is advancing, and it'll be important to see how these land use hearings go, which is why we're monitoring them closely for two reasons. One, obviously, this is a project we want to see happen, and if the land use, if the rezoning isn't granted and the variances aren't granted, it puts the project in jeopardy. Second, I think this is a bit of a test case. If we're looking at the Pendleton Pike corridor as for potential additional trades-related projects like this one, the flexibility in terms of allowing this type of land use on Pendleton Pike will be important. Currently, a lot of that is zoned retail, like 7600 Pendleton Pike is now. We've seen that what the market on Pendleton Pike does with property zoned for retail generally is very auto-oriented, gas stations, fast food, car lots, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. They're pursuing a commercial special zoning, which is kind of unique to the parcel. But even then, the willingness of the various boards and commissions that hear the rezoning and the variances and the vacation to consider this kind of a unique use for otherwise a commercial corridor will be important, engaging how things might go in the future. So we're paying close attention for a couple of different reasons, but that's the current timeline, I think. Any questions about that process or what's going on now?
Are we going to do a letter in support for any of these meetings or send someone?
I think we're going to send someone. I have a conflict on the 2nd, so I've asked Joe Murphy, who's the mayor's chief of staff, to attend. We're gonna. He's here. If you've not met Joe, you should. He will attend the Common Council meeting on the 2nd. We are going to devise some talking points between the two of us so that we have some consistent things to say to each of the 3 different audiences here. So we want to make sure that we're messaging it well across the board there. And then I plan to attend the Metropolitan Development Commission meeting and the BZA meeting. So we'll have people there to speak in support.
Great.
So I'm not sure how to ask this question, so bear with me.
Sure.
Are you grandfathering when you're changing the use? Are you grandfathering what's there in use and then working a new use where there isn't currently a use? In other words, a vacant land? Or I don't understand how you're doing this, Cam, is what I'm looking for. I hear what you say, but I don't understand how you're implementing it. Because you have uses in existence in that corridor today. Which in a sense, if you're gonna change them, then you'd have to grandfather what's there. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, you raise a good point, and leads me to something I want to clarify. I don't mean that we're going to proactively rezone swaths of Pendleton Pike necessarily. I meant more on a case-by-case basis, as there may be similar projects on Pendleton Pike.
There you go. That makes more sense. Thank you.
If you think of one of the car dealerships a little bit further northeast, if a general contractor were to buy that and want to use it for their operations,
Right.
it may, and I'm not an expert on land use, but I would, depending on how they plan to utilize the property, it may and probably likely would require a rezoning. and how the Common Council and the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Metropolitan Development Commission treat this case may be precedent for how that next one will go, is what I mean to say. So less that we're going to go through and actually pass a plan that would rezone things, in which case, yes, the current uses would be grandfathered. This would be more of a case by case. If we get some continued growth in the area and in the trades sector, we're going to have some additional land use cases like this one.
Well, at the risk of sounding really left field, what you're saying is that you're gonna grandfather what's there? Is that correct? Is that number one?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I guess, so that concept would apply if we were going to adopt a plan that would change at the city level, or it's really a county zoning ordinance, but if we were to go through the channels to change zoning by adopting a plan for the Pendleton Pike corridor that would change land use, the current uses would be grandfathered.
And that would be ordinary,
That would be,
right?
that would be, I don't know if it'd be ordinary. It would be a way to go.
I guess what I'm looking for is and maybe I'm just trying to understand what we're doing here. You're doing some extraordinary things here, in a sense. 'Cause you're trying to fit everything into a larger plan, which is our plan for that whole corridor. Okay? But you have all these ordinary, if you will, uses today, which are already zoned. I'm just trying to understand how you're going to get from here to there. And this is the first step for that, right?
It's a first step in the sense that it could be precedent. The way we're currently approaching it would be a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
So any given parcel, if it had to be rezoned, would be its own. They'd be petitioning for rezoning,
Okay.
as opposed to overlaying a new plan that rezoned a swath.
Enchilada.
Right. Yes. That works. Yeah. Which we did consider. We've also talked about, and I've had discussions with the mayor about an overlay district that I think we are studying. But this would be more of a case by case as we have a project. It may need a rezone, and how the council and the BZA rule on this rezone for Freegee will give us some indication about how that might go in the future. Is what I mean to say.
So, not to belabor this, but
For the next one.
if I understand what you just said, things are zoned one way right now.
Yes.
We're trying to establish zoning, if you will, for the future. Okay? This is the way things are going to be rezoned. We're going to grandfather this, and we're, in a sense, going to rezone what we can rezone. Okay? And we're not going to be, if another use came in that didn't fit here's what we want to do, it wouldn't be able to be zoned that way. So we're going to, in a sense, limit future zoning to fit our plan. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I don't think we are.
We're not doing that. Okay.
No. What you said makes sense. I don't think that's what we're doing. I think we're looking at, we do want to facilitate the possibility that trades companies could locate on Pendleton Pike. And in certain cases, potentially in several cases, that may require a parcel by parcel rezoning to accomplish that.
Okay, so we're doing it a piece at a time.
Yes, and really not us, but the companies.
Right.
And with likely, depending on the project, our support, as opposed to doing it in a wholesale fashion and laying over that whole corridor a different type of land use than what's there now. I think we hope to see this take root and see some development pattern change or some use change throughout the corridor. But I think The current approach is to take that on a project by project basis.
And we're only trying to do that on the north side, if you will, of Pendleton Pike. Is that correct? Or are we trying to do both, the entire corridor, meaning both sides of the road?
I don't know that I'm in a position to be very specific. I think we want to see this strategy play out. We want to see Pendleton Pike improve, and the backbone, or part of the impetus for the strategy that is underlying the trades district plan, is that it could over time improve the Pendleton Pike corridor and turn properties into potential employment centers where companies could thrive in the skilled trade sector. I'm not in a position right now to think that strategically I need to steer it. There's not a lot of real estate beyond this and Shadeland Avenue, which we'll talk about soon, that we control directly and can dispose of as we see fit. So we're really trying to kind of harness a market activity by encouraging trades and being supportive and doing the projects we can. And we'll see where it goes.
I
Yeah.
apologize for taking, trades district plan, I realize isn't that specific when
Right.
it comes to dealing with
Right.
pieces of property. Okay? I know that.
Right.
I'm just trying to get a feel for it.
Yeah. You're correct. It's not. So we'll kind of see where it goes from here.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. But given the approach, as you pointed out, it makes the Freegee engineered solutions land use case of potentially heightened importance. Because if that one gets approved and goes through, then that is a precedent for the next one,
Exactly.
wherever it might be, if it needs to be rezoned. Absent further questions, I'll move on and add actually an item that relates a little bit to rezoning, referring to the old marsh on Franklin Road, which we've talked about previously. I think when we last spoke, the property was under contract with a company that had unsuccessfully petitioned the Common Council of Larence for rezoning to allow for a wholesaling use. That company, run by two brothers who are Lawrence Township graduates, has closed on the property, so they now own the marsh. I talked to Kamal today, one of the two, and he's looking for a meeting to discuss uses that we think would be positive for the community. They do have a pending appeal of their rezoning petition that they're debating what to do with. That would to change the zoning to allow for wholesaling. So they're considering that, but in the meantime, I think just wants to know what we think might be positive. And then I also spoke with a gentleman named Robert Hurst, who runs a small grocer at 38th and Post, that told me today he is in the process of negotiating a lease with the new owners to operate a grocery out of likely one of the spaces in the adjacent commercial strip center north of the old store that would sell as a retail outlet, would sell fresh produce and meats. So he would move his location from 38th and Post to the Franklin Road space and provide a grocer in the area, which we certainly think would be positive. So I was encouraged to hear that. He had been interested in potentially buying the marsh, but was a little late because it was already under contract. So he's sought out and connected with the now new owners, and it sounds like they're working on potentially moving his store into that space. So we've talked a lot about the former marsh and access to food in the area. I saw that as positive, and we'll certainly meet with the new owners about other uses that we think might be positive. and see what their thoughts are. So I'll update you further after we have that meeting. But it was news to me that they had gone ahead and closed. I had assumed that was likely contingent on rezoning to allow for wholesale use. They've closed even before that has played out. As it sits now, they would not be able to use the property for their wholesale operation. But they bought it anyway. That's what I'm telling you. So we'll see where that goes. But there is a very real prospect at this point of a local small grocery operator moving to that space. So
That would be that space or the adjacent?
no, I think it would be in maybe where the old Chinese restaurant was.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cam, this might be, may get answered down the road, but is this kind of a startup for the wholesale? Do they have other locations? Do they have a history of doing what they want to do at that marsh?
The wholesale portion. Yeah, I think they currently operate
Okay.
out of a couple of different locations now that they lease. I'm not sure where they are, but they do run a wholesale business currently. And they saw this as a way to consolidate a couple of smaller spaces they have and actually own property. To hear them tell it, and the brothers are named Kamal and Iqbal Sadiq, and so I think that is currently operating as a business, just not out of that location.
So possibly employment opportunities for that area, or is it really
Yes, I don't think it's job intensive.
okay?
I'll say that, based on having spoken to them several times about it. It's more of a warehousing type use.
Snoring and
Yes, right. They've also, I think it was in the packet that we looked at before, they've explored the concept of a membership model, somewhat like a Restaurant Depot or Sam's or Costco, but obviously much smaller, 30,000 square feet instead of 100 plus. So that would allow for some retail use. You'd have to be a member, but then you could come in off the street as opposed to just using it for warehousing and distribution. So I think there are a number of options they're considering. I think they might also, having talked to Kamal today, might even be willing to not move their business in there at all, but lease it to someone else. I don't know that they have anybody lined up, but I think they're open to that.
interesting.
Yeah, it was a very positive conversation. He was very focused on would like to have an ongoing dialogue about what might be positive for the community and how we could help the corridor. And again, both brothers graduated from Lawrence Township schools, are familiar with the area. I think want to be a positive force. So encouraging. Any questions on that?
I just want to go back on the
Oh, sure.
BZA and the Free G property for just a second. I was the chair of the BZA for 3 or 4 years. I think it's critical that we send someone and explain how much time and energy we've spent on this property and how important it is, from our perspective, so that the BZA people and everybody else, I mean, it's got to go up the whole chain, but from our perspective, how important it is that those variances be granted.
Okay. It's a good point.
I lived in those shoes for a while. Sometimes a case would come to us that day, and you don't really grasp the extent of how much involvement Lawrence has had in a project. But this one, I just feel like we should support it and let everybody know that we're supporting it.
I agree, and it's on my calendar. I will be attending.
Okay,
Oh, okay. He takes
perfect.
care of
Thank you.
it. Good point.
We made sure to round up all those dates and make sure they're covered. Again, the first one is the council. I can't be here, but Joe will be here. And then the second, the Metropolitan Development Commission for the vacation, and then the variance in front of the BZA in Lawrence, I will attend personally. All right, moving on, if you're ready for that, to discussion of Shadeland Avenue, the 4423 Shadeland property. If you'll recall at the last meeting, we had a potentially interested individual here to talk about an offer he had submitted, and the thought was we would evaluate this month at the meeting kind of the two proposals sort of on the table between Edwards Mechanical and the Property Management USA entity. I frankly have been holding off. I talked to a third interested party in recent weeks that told me that she was going to be submitting an offer. So I thought while we were at it, we might as well consider that one. I told her I had a cutoff of Friday so that I could put something together and evaluate it. And I told her I would need, information about purchase price and investment and use and jobs and all the things that we've been evaluating all along. So I did not receive one, but I thought I might. It's I think a historic rehabilitation construction company that currently operates on the east side of Indianapolis. So it also would have been skilled trades, construction related, certainly something I would have considered. So apologize. I know this came across a little bit later, but I wanted to break it down into simple terms. We know that we've got really, I think, two good proposals. If we zoom out a little bit or step back a little bit and remember that this is a former sheriff's garage. Before that, it was a Toyota dealership, believe it or not. And car dealerships don't look like that anymore. But that's been kind of on our books for several years after the sheriff was done with it. It was essentially deeded over to the city for $1. We had the commission or the council authorize a transfer to the commission so that we could control the disposition and look for something that would be positive. Goal number one is let's get this back in private hands, back on the tax rolls, and quit having to maintain it and go out there and respond to vandalism calls and various things that go on with vacant property. And as a close second, let's make sure it's something that is positive, that it's a new owner that's going to invest in the property and hopefully own it for quite some time and do something with it that we think would be additive to the corridor and the neighborhood. And both of these, I think, achieve that. So it's either one would be a good outcome, I think. So it was really down to evaluating some of the nuances between the two proposals. Obviously, on one, there is a purchase price that's offered. I conclude, in terms of just my recommendation to you all, I want to reiterate it's your decision. To the extent that you wanted my recommendation, I would just say I think the training component with the Edwards proposal, in combination with really just the fact that Edwards is a good established company on the northeast side. They operate in Indianapolis, but it is nearby, and that adjacency, I think, could mean they're out of space where they are now. We know that, which is why they're looking at this property. And I think that means there's maybe potential future things that could happen as they continue to expand, which they've done pretty substantially in the last 5-10 years. That Joe and I attended the second meeting of the Skilled Trades Committee that we've convened with Larence Township Schools last night, which has been hugely positive, but I think continues to sort of highlight that the backbone of the skilled trade strategy really needs to be workforce development opportunities and training access for Lawrence residents so that companies can grow and residents here have access to the training that could put them in a positive skilled trades career that could benefit them long term. So I think there's a lot of value I would tend to put on that component. One of the principles of Edwards has operated and I think still operates a training and certification program in Cincinnati. So this is something that they have done before with success, and they realize that they need workforce. There's a lot of demand on their side, not a lot of supply on the other side, and they want to be part of the solution. And I think having that in Larence and being able to harness that could mean good things in the future, even if some of the folks they train and certify go on to work for other trades companies or start their own trades companies. I think that's the kind of genesis that would be positive on the corridor. So that's how I scored it or saw it. But I think the point of having this on the staff update and sending that to you all is so that we could discuss amongst ourselves and come to some sort of resolution. Again, with the understanding it is your decision as a body.
How quickly can we get, and I, like you think both proposals are very doable. How quickly can we get, let's start with Edwards to act? I'd like to see this property get put to productive use soon versus later. So do we have a timing?
Yeah, not a specific one. I think both of the companies are chomping at the bit a little bit. Edwards is out of space and has been for some time, so they've resolved to look for a property that would be an opportunity to offset some of their, to house their fleet maintenance and add this training component. So they've been after me about, let's keep this moving. And I know from his presentation here that the other offeror, the Property Maintenance USA company, currently operates nearby, and he has he made clear in the offering sheet that he submitted that he would close in 30 to 60 days. So and get moving. So I think both of them could happen pretty quickly, and frankly, it's probably pretty even. We already do have a draft of a project agreement with Edwards that their attorney has seen, sent a few comments on, kind of revised the exhibit about their commitments, et cetera. We kind of paused to figure out 4399 Shadeland Avenue property that we discussed at the last meeting. We think we could partner with the Community Development Corporation, of course, on that. So we got that checked off. And in the meantime, we had this other offer that we needed to consider. But I think we could, should you all choose the Edwards proposal, I think we could revisit that project agreement and get to a final version pretty quickly here.
And does either of these proposals have a negative effect on our ingress and egress to that back property at 4399? Would they be the same?
It'd be the same. Both have interest in some added space just south of the building, but I think they both understand that we're very jealous of ingress egress in that strip, and we've been clear with both that we would preserve essentially the southern property line of that little white former house that had been a convenience store that's now an HVAC company, actually. Somewhat serendipitously, I guess. Over, like, if you were to extend that east, that's how we've kind of drawn the line with both companies and said, there would be a fenced-in portion there. And I think Chris Barnett of the CDC, and I spoke with counsel for Edwards a couple of weeks ago, made that clear, and then also said, the CDC is probably willing to grant some manner of access rights for ingress egress in the meantime for the company that would own, even over the property that it would maintain ownership of. We may still have vehicles going in and out from Edwards through there, which would be fine, so long as we control the ultimate disposition with or at least a sympathetic party does that understands the value of it.
Cam, have you seen plans for either of these? I know we see a $700,000 capital investment for property and management, but do you know what he plans to do, or are there any kind of plans or drawings or anything as of yet? I know it's early, but
Right, not drawings. No, not for either one. I think we've seen some. Both have been in the building and evaluated it, and both are sort of practiced in that as skilled trades or construction related operators. So those numbers come from budgets that the companies kind of put together, but neither have included visual representation. I think the numbers are fairly similar because they mostly center around things that the building needs in order to be habitable. I think we can anticipate a lot of nuts and bolts things, new roof, some windows, paint, signage, new lighting, I think would be part of both proposals. As to then you're in the specifics about color scheme and interior layout, and we don't have that from either.
Besides the property itself, are either company asking us to do anything? Any forms of contribution?
Other than, no. I guess with the caveat that the contribution of the property to Edwards is something that it treats as an incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure they're not asking for
Whereas
some sort of.
Property management buys it. 150.
Yes, right. So that would be the one ask. I've had some side conversations with counsel for Edwards about, I think they're aware that we've authorized a training grant with Williams Comfort Air. As they roll out that training facility, training certification, I don't know. He's hinted that they would be interested in partnering in that way, but also I think they realize that there's state money through DWD available, and there are state tax credits available that would offset some training costs through the IEDC. So I think they may want us to hold their hand a little bit on trying to find some startup money to get the training center going on. It wouldn't necessarily have to come out of our pocket, and it's not part of the project agreement yet. So it wouldn't be a present commitment.
Remind me, do we have any cleanup obligations on this one? It seemed like it was a contaminated property for a while, or maybe still is.
It's not.
It's not.
Nope. Not. We've under the prior EPA grant did assess the property, phase 1, I think a phase 2, including radar, ground penetrating radar, to see if there are underground storage tanks, as you might sometimes see at auto-related car dealerships or other auto-related facilities, and no issues noted.
Mr. Speaker, question. Cam, would there be a way with Edwards to define some type of relationship with Lawrence Township Schools regarding the utilization or integration of their trades and training program with McKenzie?
I like the idea, and I think Edwards would be open to it. I'll tell you from our experience, meeting with the school corporation or the district about that concept, they would welcome it too, but don't know what shape that would take quite yet. So could we include a commitment that said essentially they would, agree to foster that? I think so. Beyond that, I think we're maybe getting out ahead of the schools.
Yeah, but that's where I would go, that if you not define that relationship within the context of this agreement, but allude to it.
Sure.
So that would be a natural next step, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
If we could, you think we could do that?
I do. That's a good suggestion. I think they would welcome that.
Next, how do we go from this piece of paper and your recommendation?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing, what's the next step? How do we do this?
I think the next step would be for you all to agree as a commission which proposal you want to select and give your consent for me to work on a project agreement with whichever one that is.
Okay, so I'm stumbling here, Cam.
Okay.
Are you looking for a motion? Are you looking, I mean, your recommendation is that we go with Edwards, right?
It is.
Okay, so how do we, can I just say, I move that we accept Cam's recommendation of Edwards Mechanical and, sorry, with your permission?
Oh, no, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I move that we accept Cam's recommendations of Edwards Mechanical and authorize him to proceed to develop the Ts and Cs necessary to put the, well, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a proposal at this stage, the agreement between the two organizations.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted under new business is consent along those lines. So yes.
Get all that, Mary Jo?
I wrote really fast.
Do I, so
Hopefully the recording is
I
on.
have moves to do that.
Great.
And prior to that, sorry, Jerry, does anyone else have any,
I'm sorry.
oh, you're okay, questions, comments about either one of these companies that we have in front of us?
I think when you look at both of them, the training concept out of Edwards and the increased size of the operation and the potential, the number of employees, I mean, they're both good proposals, but those two items outweigh what is not in the other proposal and outweighs the merits of the other proposal, at least from my viewpoint.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I feel the same way.
Is that a second? Or?
And I'll second that.
All right, all
well
in
played.
favor to move forward with Edwards?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, got a decision. Cam, do you have anything else for new business, or is that all for this evening?
No, that covers it. Thank you.
Any other business to come before the commission tonight?
Mr. President, I guess we should address the December meeting. I assume,
Yes, it is not a meeting on the schedule, but if something comes up through the holidays and we have to have one, which I don't foresee anything at this moment. Cam, do you foresee anything?
No. The one asterisk being timing of Edwards and the project agreement.
I didn't think about that.
It may, because I think what we've set up here is that I will come back to you with a near final or near final project agreement for you to consider and pass a resolution accepting. That I would anticipate will have a due diligence period in it, just like we're currently under with 3G. Prior to closing. So it's kind of document that's executed almost like a purchase agreement. So in advance, at some point in advance of closing. If there is, I think there's some things we could do in terms of allowing, they currently have an access agreement with Edwards. So if they needed to be on the property, they could do so under that. If that allows us to put off approval and execution of the project agreement until January, fine, even if that means the due diligence window is very short and we close pretty quickly thereafter because they're able to accomplish some due diligence in the meantime. But if they come back to me and say, hey, we'd like to get this approved and get it inked and have an actual contract established yet this year, then I may need to contact you to schedule a meeting really for that limited purpose.
Should we compare calendars and then, but also, what's the noticing requirement? How many days in advance if we have a meeting? You have to send out,
2 weeks,
48 hours,
48 hours.
2 days.
2 days.
okay?
And that's it. Yeah, I mean, that's absent a public hearing, which would not be, relative to the Edwards project, there's not a requirement in the statute for a public hearing. That has to be noticed 10 days in advance in the paper, but otherwise, we just have to publish our agenda 48 hours ahead of the meeting.
And I personally by no means want to delay this project anymore.
Right.
But I want to respect everyone's schedules as well. And I know, Jerry, you are traveling for sure December. Is anyone else?
I'm gone the week of.
Ellie's gone. Okay, Bruce?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm good.
I'm good too until after Christmas. So.
You got a quorum.
Okay. So if we need to,
Yeah, I'll be in touch. We can leave it for now, and do it if and when needed.
so as of now, the next meeting will be Tuesday, January 28th, 2020. Any other business? I would like to take a moment to congratulate Ally on being our representative for City County Council moving forward. Congratulations, Ally.
Congratulations.
I think we might be losing you, but
Yeah, they're checking with the attorneys to see if I can remain on the commission.
Okay.
See if there's any conflict of interest. We'll see.
if there is nothing else, can I have a motion to close this meeting?
So moved.
I'll second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting closed.